There's a number going around that supposedly explains how China destroyed the company that controlled the world's diamond supply for a century. De Beers, the story goes, lost $3.7 billion because a factory in China figured out how to grow diamonds. That's not a typo. It's also not De Beers' number. The $3.7 billion belongs to Anglo American, the mining giant that owns 85% of De Beers, and it covers their entire company. De Beers' real number is smaller, and it's actually worse, and it traces back to one county in China most people have never heard of. Here's where that viral number actually comes from. In 2025, the whole Anglo-American group, De Beers included, posted a net loss of $3.7 billion. Copper prices, iron ore, coal mines on fire in South Africa, all of it factored into that single total. The diamond business is only one small piece of a much bigger balance sheet, and the piece that's falling apart is smaller than the headline number suggests. De Beers on its own posted an EBITDA loss of $511 million in 2025. That's steep, but it's nowhere near $3.7 billion. What's easy to miss is that De Beers' revenue for the year actually went up, from $3.3 billion in 2024 to $3.5 billion in 2025, a rise of about 6%. So the company sold more diamonds and still lost more money doing it. Rough diamond prices kept sliding, production kept getting cut, and the cost of running the business outpaced whatever revenue came in the door. The real damage shows up somewhere else entirely, and it's the number that actually matters. Anglo American has written down the value of De Beers for 3 years running now. $2.6 billion in 2023, $2.9 billion in 2024, another $2.3 billion in 2025. Add those up, and you get $6.8 billion erased from a single company's books in 3 years, cutting De Beers' carrying value from $9.2 billion down to just $2.3 billion. That's a company that lost roughly 3/4 of its value on paper, and the reason has nothing to do with a mine running dry or a scandal breaking. The product it sells simply got a working substitute that costs a fraction as much. Anglo felt the pain too. The dividend paid to shareholders got cut by 64%, from 64 cents a share down to 23 cents, from around $800 million to about $200 million. And here's the part that should really change how you read that viral number. Anglo American's underlying earnings from its actual mining operations, copper, iron ore, everything that isn't diamonds, still rose 2% to $6.4 billion. The company isn't dying. The diamond division inside it is, and Anglo's own CEO, Duncan Wanblad, told reporters flatly and without much drama that there's currently a plentiful supply of rough diamonds sitting in the market with nowhere profitable to go. To understand why a swing from $9.2 billion down to $2.3 billion actually matters, it helps to know what De Beers was really selling for the last 100 years, and it was never just the diamonds. Cecil Rhodes founded the company in 1888 in Kimberley, South Africa, and by the middle of the 20th century, De Beers controlled somewhere around 90% of the world's rough diamond supply through a system called the Central Selling Organization, feeding a global diamond jewelry industry now worth close to $90 billion a year. The company didn't just mine diamonds, it also decided how many reached the market in any given year and stockpiled the rest, holding supply deliberately tight no matter how much rock was actually sitting in the ground. Then in 1947, with diamond sales still badly depressed from the Great Depression, De Beers hired an advertising agency called NW. Ayer, and a copywriter there named Francis Garrity, wrote 4 words that ended up doing more for the diamond business than any mine ever did: "A diamond is forever." The slogan told buyers a diamond was eternal, which quietly discouraged anyone from reselling one, since a flood of used diamonds coming back onto the market would have exposed exactly how much supply was sitting in vaults and jewelry boxes worldwide. None of that ever depended on the diamonds themselves being rare, only on enough people believing they were, which turns out to be a very different thing to protect once somebody figures out how to grow the product from scratch. So what actually did that? Not a hedge fund short, not a scandal, not a competitor undercutting on marketing. A county in Henan province called Zhecheng, home to around 600,000 people, that 40 years ago was known for exactly 2 things: chili peppers and beef cattle. Nobody photographed it for a magazine cover. Nobody put it on a stock ticker. It just quietly built the largest concentration of diamond-growing factories on the planet. The scale is hard to picture until you hear the actual output. Zhecheng's industrial zone now produces about 6 billion carats of diamond single crystal and 15 billion carats of diamond micropowder every year, alongside more than 10 million carats of gem-quality, jewelry-grade lab-grown diamonds. China as a country produced roughly 70% of the world's synthetic diamonds in 2023, close to 22 million carats total, and Zhecheng alone was responsible for nearly half of that national output. One county in an inland Chinese province with 0 natural diamond deposits of its own, growing carbon crystal at a scale most mining companies could never match with a drill. For comparison, De Beers, the company that spent a century as the industry's single dominant miner, pulled about 21.7 million carats of rough diamonds out of the ground across every mine it owns worldwide in all of 2025. One county's gem quality output alone sits in the same order of magnitude as one multinational's entire global mining operation, and only one of them needed a drill. More than 110 separate diamond-related businesses now operate inside Zhecheng's industrial park, including companies the Chinese government has designated national little giants, its term for small firms that dominate one specific technical niche and quietly outcompete much larger rivals. One of them, Huifeng Diamond, grew from a family workshop into the country's largest producer of diamond micropowder. Rough stones grown there routinely get shipped out to cutting hubs abroad and then onto jewelry counters across the United States, Europe, and the Middle East, which means a ring sold in a mall outside Chicago has a real chance of having started its life inside a press in a county most Americans could not place on a map. None of this happened overnight either. The groundwork goes back decades, to when Chinese manufacturers needed industrial-grade diamonds for cutting tools and grinding wheels and couldn't get reliable supply from anywhere else. Only later did local factories chase gem quality, refining their press designs and catalyst formulas until the output could pass as jewelry rather than just abrasive grit. And the jewelry-quality stones eventually got good enough that the difference stopped being visible at all. A trained gemologist sitting at a bench with a loupe and a set of tweezers cannot tell a lab-grown diamond from a natural one just by looking. Same hardness, a 10 on the Mohs scale. Same refractive index. Same thermal conductivity. The only reliable way to separate the two is specialized spectroscopy equipment that reads trace nitrogen patterns inside the crystal lattice, the kind of gear a jewelry counter in a shopping mall simply does not own. In 2018, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission rewrote its own legal definition of the word diamond and quietly dropped the word natural from it entirely. On paper, in the eyes of American regulators, a stone grown in Henan and a stone dug out of a kimberlite pipe in Botswana are now the exact same product. So how do you actually grow a real diamond in a machine? The method is called HPHT, short for high pressure, high temperature, and once you understand it, it stops sounding like science fiction and starts sounding almost simple. You start with a small diamond seed crystal sitting inside a metal capsule next to a carbon source, usually high purity graphite, and a metal catalyst, typically iron, nickel, or cobalt. The basic design behind this goes back further than most people would guess. General Electric built the first working version of it back in 1954, using what's called a belt press. 2 opposing anvils squeezing a cylindrical cell, held together by steel bands. Zhecheng's factories mostly run a newer variant, the cubic press, 6 anvils closing in on a cube-shaped cell from all 6 sides at once, which turns out to be better suited for volume production of larger, cleaner stones. Then that press, whichever design it is, squeezes the capsule from every direction at once, up to 5 to 6 gigapascals of pressure. To put that in perspective, that's somewhere around 50,000 to 60,000 times the atmospheric pressure sitting on you right now. At the same time, the capsule heats up to somewhere between 1300 and 1600 degrees Celsius. Under those exact conditions, the metal catalyst melts. The carbon from the graphite dissolves into it and migrates over to the cooler seed crystal, where it starts depositing itself layer by layer into the same crystal lattice structure as a natural diamond. Those pressure and temperature numbers aren't arbitrary. They replicate the conditions found roughly 150 to 200 kilometers below the Earth's surface, the exact depth where natural diamonds actually form over the course of 1 billion years or more. A factory in Zhecheng recreates that entire geological process in a machine roughly the size of a shipping container, and instead of 1 billion years, it takes about a week. Same pressure, same heat, same carbon atoms arranging themselves into the same structure, just with someone controlling the pace instead of leaving it to geology. And that's really the whole story in one machine. There's no trick to it, no clever loophole, just physics that used to require 1 billion years, now compressed into a week by people willing to build the equipment and run it around the clock. Once that capability exists at industrial scale in over 100 factories inside a single county, the economics of the entire diamond industry stop making sense the old way. A 1-carat natural diamond averaged about $4,200 in 2025, down from around $6,000 back in 2021. A comparable 1-carat lab-grown diamond now averages $1,000 or less at retail. Go down to the wholesale level where rough stones get sold to cutters before they ever reach a jewelry counter, and the fall is even steeper. Lab-grown wholesale prices dropped roughly 74% between 2020 and 2025, according to Diamond Industry Pricing Research. A stone that wholesaled for around $3,410 a carat in 2020 was trading closer to $564 by the middle of 2026. That kind of price collapse doesn't just squeeze profit margins, it kills whole companies outright. WD Lab-Grown Diamonds, once the second largest lab-grown diamond producer in the United States, filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in October 2023. This was an American company, founded in 2008, using American manufacturing technology, and it still couldn't compete on price with what was coming out of Henan. Its liabilities topped $44 million against just $3 million in assets. In the years before the collapse, the company had spent a lot of its energy suing rival lab-grown producers over patents instead of racing them on cost, and by the time that played out, the Chinese factories had already made the fight academic. It didn't lose to a scandal or bad management alone. It lost to a spreadsheet nobody could out-argue, and the shift in buyer behavior has been just as dramatic as the shift in price. Lab-grown diamonds crossed 50% of U.S. engagement ring center stones for the first time in 2024. By 2026, that share reached 61%, according to the Knott's annual wedding survey, more than double where it stood just 2 years earlier. Younger buyers, the generation that grew up able to look up exactly how a diamond gets priced and where it comes from, simply stopped seeing a reason to pay 5 times more for a stone that tests, weighs, and sparkles exactly the same under a jeweler's loupe. Now that 61% figure needs one honest correction of its own, because it's measured by volume, by the number of rings sold, not by the money spent. Measured by insured appraisal value instead, lab-grown cites closer to 48% of engagement rings. Natural diamonds still pull in more total dollars than their unit share would suggest, because a mined ring averages around $7,600 against roughly $4,900 for a lab-grown ring. What's actually happening is that buyers aren't just switching, they're upgrading. The average lab-grown center stone has grown from 1.31 carats in 2019 to over 2.4 carats by 2026, nearly double, because the same wedding budget that used to buy a small natural stone now buys a noticeably bigger lab-grown one. Nobody's really paying less for an engagement ring. They're paying about the same and walking out with a rock twice the size. If you're the kind of person who wants the real number instead of whatever version is going viral, this channel exists for exactly that. I cover the manufacturing and technology moves coming out of China that actually reshape global industries, not the exaggerated headline version. Hit subscribe so the next one lands in your feed. Now, all of that damage stays inside corporate balance sheets right up until it doesn't. Botswana is the world's second largest producer of natural rough diamonds, and diamonds have historically made up around 70% of the country's exports, and close to a third of its government revenue. De Beers doesn't just sell Botswana's diamonds, it mines most of them jointly with the Botswana government through a company called Debswana. When De Beers' end of the business collapses, Debswana's production collapses right along with it. Output fell 27% in 2024 to 17.9 million carats, then fell again in 2025 down to 15.1 million, a drop of roughly 40% from where production sat back in 2023. In the fourth quarter of 2025 alone, Botswana's diamond output fell 56% compared to the year before. 2 separate international credit rating agencies responded the way they respond to any country whose main export just lost most of its value. Moody's cut Botswana's sovereign credit rating in October 2025. S&P cut it again in March 2026. Both cuts were tied explicitly to the diamond slump, and both pushed the country's borrowing costs higher, right as government revenue from diamonds was falling. Botswana's economy contracted in both 2024 and 2025. This is what a lab press sitting in Henan looks like once it reaches all the way down to a national budget on the other side of the planet. A country's credit rating downgraded because a machine the size of a shipping container can now grow the exact same product a mine used to have to dig up. The other place that genuinely feels every bit of this every single day is the city of Surat, in the Indian state of Gujarat, where close to 90% of the world's diamonds get cut and polished, natural and lab-grown alike, in an industry employing well over 1 million people. The polishing wheels don't care where the rough stone came from. The tools are the same, the training is the same, and the cutter earns roughly the same wage either way. But the rough now arriving from Zhecheng comes with steadier volume and a more predictable cost basis than rough from a mine-facing production cuts and falling prices, so more and more of Surat's factories are shifting their lines toward lab-grown work simply because that's where the reliable margin is. De Beers didn't just quietly watch all of this happen and lose money, though. It tried to fight back on several fronts at once, and watching how badly each attempt went is its own story. In 2018, years before any of this reached full crisis level, De Beers launched its own lab-grown diamond brand called Lightbox and priced it deliberately low as a strategy to make lab-grown stones feel like cheap costume jewelry instead of a real, credible alternative to natural diamonds. The idea was to keep the two markets separate in the public's mind. It didn't work. Lab-grown quality kept climbing while natural diamond prices kept falling toward it, and by May 2025, De Beers shut Lightbox down completely. The company had accidentally proven the exact market it was trying to bury. De Beers tried several other angles too. It built a blockchain-based tracking platform called Tracker, meant to prove exactly where a natural diamond came from, mine to finger. It launched a branded, polished diamond program called Origin, built around that same traceability story. It signed on to something called the Luanda Accord, an industry-wide pact between diamond-producing nations and companies to jointly market natural stones as a category, rather than competing brand against brand, while a much bigger threat ate everyone's market at once. All of it aimed at the same idea, that a diamond with a documented human geological origin story is worth paying extra for. The technology behind Tracker is genuinely real. What's missing is enough buyers willing to pay a premium for a receipt when the alternative sitting right next to it, same hardness, same sparkle, same certificate from the same grading labs, costs a fraction of the price. By 2026, De Beers had also cut its own production guidance down to a range of 21 to 26 million carats a year, continuing a decline from the 24.7 million carats it mined back in 2024, and cut the number of authorized buyers invited to its regular diamond sales, called sites, from 69 down to around 45. Then in July of that year, the company finally abandoned decades of holding prices artificially above the market rate and just cut them, across every category, to match what stones were trading for on the secondary market. For a company that spent most of a century controlling exactly how many diamonds reached the market and at what price, giving up that control is close to giving up the entire business model, which is why De Beers is currently up for sale. Anglo American publicly confirmed the sale process in May 2024, and as of early 2026, CEO Duncan Wanblad has said the company is working through final bids from multiple interested parties, including government interest from Botswana, which still owns the remaining 15% of De Beers and supplies most of its rough diamond output. Finding a real buyer willing to pay real money for a business that just lost roughly 3/4 of its value in 3 years has proven genuinely difficult, because a mining operation is an easy sell. But a broken scarcity myth is a much harder pitch, especially with the machine that broke it still running at full production around the clock. Meanwhile, Anglo American is putting its actual corporate weight behind something else entirely. It's merging with the Canadian mining company Teck Resources in a $53 billion deal that will create Anglo Teck, a copper producer with more than 1.2 million metric tons of annual output, projected to sit among the 5 largest copper companies on Earth. Copper and iron ore are what's actually keeping Anglo's earnings up right now, not diamonds. And this restructuring started right after Anglo fended off a takeover approach from the mining giant BHP in 2024, an approach that made clear just how much diamonds, coal, and platinum had turned from assets into liabilities on Anglo's own books. Copper feeds power grids and electric vehicles, demand that's only climbing every year. Diamonds feed a jewelry counter that a factory in Henan can now supply for a tenth of the cost. It's not hard to see which one a mining company keeps. The company that built its identity for a century around a stone dug out of the ground is restructuring itself around a metal instead and quietly walking away from the business that made it famous. No mine ran dry here, and no rival country stumbled onto a surprise diamond deposit. A county that used to grow chili peppers figured out how to grow carbon crystal instead, at a scale and a cost that 100 years of controlled scarcity could not survive. The Earth spent 1 billion years making something rare. Zhecheng spent a decade making it common, but manufactured scarcity is only half of China's playbook. Rare earth metals are the other half, the ones China didn't have to grow in a lab because it already controls almost all of them in the ground, an estimated $80 trillion worth. That breakdown is queued up next.